By the way, we have an iconic libertarian. A lot of his books have been turned into films. Ron Paul is in his new film. And, of course, Kevin Sorbo, Hercules, was on a few weeks ago with us. He's in it as well. I'm very excited to have him on. Again, he's the author of 10 books, including 3 novels. He's the writer, producer, director of the new pro-libertarian near-future suspense thriller film, Alongside Night, which he adapted from his 1979 novel of the same name that really mirrors what we're starting to see happen. The novel was endorsed by Nobel laureate Milton Friedman, A Clockwork Orange author Anthony Burgess, and Dr. Ron Paul, as well as having received rave reviews in magazines and newspapers, including Reason and the Los Angeles Times Book Review. AlongsideNightMovie.com. And again, I have no stake in the film. I'll probably sell it when it comes out on DVD, along with God Is Not Dead and other great films that are really successful now. The reason I promote these is because, just like I had no stake in America, but they're trying to put him in prison for making it, Dinesh D'Souza, so I have a stake in the First Amendment, period. They were trying to lock somebody up for a film that I disagreed with. I would probably have them on. But I really think this book is excellent. Finally got a chance to read it and finish it. Can't wait to see the film. They've sent me a raw copy of it, but I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it yet. I will, probably tonight or tomorrow. Neil, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sorry we rescheduled you a few weeks ago.
Well, I understand, Alex, breaking news has to take precedence. It is such a pleasure to be on with you. I am one of your subscribers.
Well, thank you, brother. Well, it's great to have you here. Tell folks that don't know about the book why it resonates with folks like Ron Paul and the author of Clockwork Orange and others that have been warning of dystopias.
Well, Alex, not to put too fine a point on it, and proudly to express the egoism that Ayn Rand would approve of, but when it comes to portraying the collapse of the United States due to statism, there's basically 2 stories. There's Atlas Shrugged and there's Alongside Night. Now, I had an advantage that Ayn Rand didn't have. She wasn't able to read Alongside Night before she wrote Atlas Shrugged, but I was able to read Atlas Shrugged before I wrote Alongside Night.
People that read the book are blown away by many of the parallels that have come true. Break down the basic plot of the book for folks without giving away too much.
I took historical examples such as Weimar Germany in 1923, which created the seeds after World War I for German dissatisfaction and oppression, which led to Adolf Hitler having the opportunity to take over. I used historical precedents like that, and like Sinclair Lewis did in It Can't Happen Here, I applied it to the near future United States. And what I came up with was a United States collapsing from government overspending, spending us into oblivion. The Federal Reserve, because there's no point on Art Laffer's curve for taxes to be able to support the government anymore. So the debt is monetized by the Federal Reserve. Debt is transferred to overseas borrowers because they use the dollar as their reserve currency. And essentially what happens is it reaches a crisis point where the government doesn't have the ability to pay the army anymore. In the meanwhile, I have a character, Dr. Martin Vreeland, the character played by Kevin Sorbo, who has convinced the European Common Market Treaty Organization. Remember, in the novel, I wrote this before there was a European Union or a euro. He convinces them to go on a gold-backed Eurofranc and a free market economy. So while the United States is in collapse, Europe is in recovery. And he is the key player as to whether or not he is appointed Treasury Secretary, so the European finance ministers will lend enough gold to the United States to float a new hard currency to be able to pay the army again. However, the director in the novel of the FBI and updated in the movie to the director of FEMA have their own agenda. And so Dr. Vreeland and his family, including his 16-year-old son, Elliot, basically find themselves on the run from the federal government as they attempt to get out of the country before an arrest warrant can put them in a secret FEMA prison.
And now under NDAA, Eric Holder, the master kingpin of so many public criminal operations, says that Homeland Security is not for radical Islam, but it is for the Tea Party, gun owners, libertarians, conservatives. Why do you think we're seeing this shift publicly, it's so surreal, I can't even believe it, but publicly onto anybody that likes George Washington as a terrorist?
Well, for the same reason why the original tyrant of this continent, King George III, was not particularly fond of the Continental Congress. If you stand up for your rights, then you are not their pawns anymore, and you're a problem.
Wow, I want to talk more about the film, but afterwards I want to get your view just on the world today. Again, we have Neil Schulman alongside nightmovie.com. But first off, tell folks where and when it's opening, how we can make sure that it's a big hit at first, because for the folks that don't know, if the first cities where it's shown sell out for even a few days in a row, it will then get booked at other theaters, causing a chain reaction.
Well, Alex, it is possible for anybody, including Alex Jones, to go to the tug.com, and I'll use the radio code to spell that. That's Tango Uniform Golf Golf, tug.com, and book a screening of Alongside Night anywhere in the United States. There are thousands of theaters which are already signed up into the tug.com system, ready to put this movie out there. And so if you don't find a screening already in your own city, you book one, but you do have to do a little bit of marketing because you have to hit a minimum of somewhere between 60 and 70 or so tickets sold for the screening to be confirmed. However, if it's not confirmed, nobody gets charged, including the promoter. The promoter gets 5% of the ticket sales, and it's essentially on-demand distribution from the grassroots, which is an ideal situation for an independent film like Alongside Night, which, although it's being given a lot of attention, Kevin Sorbo was just on ABC's On the Red Carpet over the weekend. So we are breaking through to the mass market entertainment media. But nonetheless, Hollywood hasn't given us a distribution deal yet. And this is an ideal way to organize grassroots distribution while we're waiting for a traditional run like Kevin Sorbo's previous film, God's Not Dead, which in 9 weeks did $61 million at the domestic box office.
And then people say, well, why do I want to make, the independent filmmaker $61 million? Because then they can make hit after hit promoting pro-freedom, pro-human messages, and we can literally overthrow Hollywood, the main globalist propaganda arm. This is how you win wars. 90% of it is propaganda. And folks, propaganda is a neutral term. It has a negative connotation. But there's black propaganda, gray propaganda, and white propaganda. When we put out white propaganda, families are good. Private property is good. Self-defense is good. It's a win-win-win. You feel good at night. You have a great society. You don't screw people over. Black propaganda is lying to people, destroying them, dumbing them down, making them dependent. MSNBC. Being deceptive, manipulating, cheating people, making them think as groups, not individuals. Gray propaganda is just basically taking care of yourself at other people's expenses. Your take on that? I think the age of the kleptocrat is coming to an end. I believe that the waxing of corruption right now will be the beginning of their undoing. Look at all the statistics.
Alex, you do a job as an investigative journalist, which absolutely has to be done. I'm taking a slightly different approach. I'm saying I think that the system is already beyond the tipping point, and I think that we are already into a rebirth of the 1776 scenario of directly defending our rights against the government. However, I am not advocating violence. I am not advocating combating the government.
No, I agree. The kleptocratic left wants us to have a civil war with the police and military. We need to just be InfoWar with our dollars and our words, befriend them, and when they still attack us, just try to step out of the way, as almost like judo. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Going back to Neil Schulman, very interesting fella, alongside nightmovie.com. And again, I've heard about this group. I think it started in Austin a few years ago. It's become very popular, and it's really propelling a lot of independent films to huge success. A lot of liberty-based films where you go sign up that you do want to see it at a theater in your area who's associated with it. And then if enough people do that, it comes and is shown there. And I think you've only got to usually get about a quarter of the theater filled, and then that will pay to bring it to the theater. Very, very exciting. Neil, tell folks again how they can go to that website and sign up to see alongside nightmovie.com. And then if it doesn't show, their money's refunded.
Right. Well, first of all, it doesn't cost the promoter any money to begin with. You don't have to put up any of your own money. But very frankly, if you go to alongsidenightmovie.com, right on our website, we either have you click through to find theaters or host a screening, and that'll put you right on the tug.com website, either to buy a ticket for an existing screening or to host a screening of your own. Listen, let me emphasize, Alongside Night is not a documentary like Dinesh D'Souza is putting out. No offense to Dinesh D'Souza. He is the opposite number of Michael Moore. But what Alongside Night movie is a near future political thriller. And we're talking about a movie with a lot of drama, a lot of action, a lot of comedy, and great music, including a full symphony orchestra score recorded by the National Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine, and a theme song, which you might as well figure that is coming out of a James Bond movie, which I'm very proud to say was written and performed by my daughter Soleil.
Amazing. Well, again, it's a key part of the info war that these independent films get promoted out there. Looking at the larger picture, I mean, I agree with you. We're going into the end game with these people because they're order out of chaos. They're more than happy to just wreck everything. And
they've already done it, Alex. In other words, we don't need to. Look, when Alongside Night first came out in 1979, it was considered science fiction. It's not science fiction anymore because the conditions necessary for them to have totally violated the rights of the American people, and for us to realize that the Constitution, which was so carefully crafted to limit power, has not done that. It's a tragedy that what our founding fathers crafted together and to balance off the powers of government so that the people would always be in charge. Over the centuries, it is degraded to the point where that isn't true anymore. We have our rights, as stated eloquently in the Declaration of Independence, and we never give up those rights. It is not subject to the whim of the government. It is not subject to the whim of anybody. We stand up for those rights. We simply say, no, we will not be oppressed. We are Americans, and we remember, and we will never forget.
We've got a couple minutes left before we go to break, and I look forward to getting you back on the Nightly News soon to break down more of the film. But other points you'd like to address dealing with the film or just where our culture and society is going?
All right. Very frankly, we have already reached the tipping point where the government and the powers that wish to oppress us have already taken on too much, more than they can chew. Okay, there is no point on the Laffer curve where taxation can support the government debt. It can't even service the debt. Okay, we are going to reach a point where the dollar is no longer going to be the reserve currency of other countries, and they're not going to eat our debt anymore. When that happens, there's not going to be any money for welfare anymore. You can talk about whether or not welfare is going to be used for United States citizens or for foreigners. It doesn't matter when the checks bounce. And so what we need to do is we need to focus on a post-political situation, a situation in where the solutions come from the economic sector, not the political sector. Resilient markets, secure communication, secure transportation of goods and services in such a way that they can't stop our trade anymore. We build up secure markets. We build up our secure communications in such a way that we exercise our freedom and simply refuse to knuckle down. You know what? Can you do 5 more minutes with us on the other side? Because I want to talk about what you just said. It's so key. Everything the globalists do, the global collectivists who exempt themselves from their own collectivism, they live above it but skim off the top, use collectivism to dumb us down and domesticate us. Everything they do is about making us dependent, making us not have our own systems. The great crime is to be Amish or to have a lemonade stand. The great crime is to have your own machine shop. That's where they send the zoners and the bureaucrats to shut you down. You're absolutely right. We must become independent. That's the key. We'll be back. Stay with us. I wanted to ask our guest who's on with us, Neil Schulman, a best-selling author, researcher, alongside nightmovie.com that Ron Paul and Kevin Sorbo and others are in, that you can help make a success. I wanted to ask him, though, I mean, he hits on building our own economic systems, becoming self-sufficient as the collapse comes into view. Ron Paul's talked about blaming the globalists for the collapse so they don't blame what's left of real capitalism for crony capitalism when that goes down. I think that's key as well. But also reaching out to people in the system so they understand the big picture, exposing the globalists as wanting to ride this collapse that they helped engineer, but also becoming somewhat self-sufficient.
or even thinking about being self-sufficient will then move us in the right direction. I totally agree with you, because you can see the system, as I said before we went to break. They do everything they can to make us dependent and to make us basically be like domesticated jellyfish. Why do you think that is, Neil? I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, that's their weak point. They're worried about libertarians and patriots who understand what freedom's about, just like cancer worries about being cut out of the body by the scalpel, if it had a consciousness, and they're worried about self-sufficiency. So I think if you look at how they're arrayed to stop us, you see the answer to defeat them right there.
Look, in Star Wars, what leads to the destruction of the Empire? It's their hubris. It's their belief that the Death Star is actually more powerful than the Rebel Alliance. Okay, we have the tradition of freedom. They are counting from centuries of public education, from control of the mass media, from control of the culture. They think that they can make us forget who we are. They can't. We won't forget. We will never forget. Now, I also need to point out something else, Alex. You're always trying to unearth secrets. You're looking for the whistleblowers. You're trying to find out what the enemy is doing in secret. That's great work. But what they do out in the open, what they brag, what they consider their triumphs, is perfectly sufficient for us to recognize them for what they are. We don't need to look at the curtain to know that that there is no wizard there.
Very profound. No, I agree with you. And so much of what is out in the open, because you're informed, is not out in the open to the public. Still, maybe 30% of the public in polls thinks hydrofluorosilicic acid is good for them. And then I say to them, well, then why are they forcibly putting it in? Why don't you just take it? Forced medication is against the law, federally, at the state level, and under the Geneva Convention. And they just laugh at me and just move on with their ignorance. So I don't even so much cover what's secret. I do some of that. But what is public but hidden in plain view.
That's exactly right. But we need to just remember who we are. We need to remember what our basic principles are. And if we act according to the principles that we were founded on as a nation, as a country, not as a state, not even as a federation of states, because that's a political construction which is a temporary device to try to restrain them.
Sure. It's the culture of America, the ideals that were never truly realized that threaten the dragons of the New World Order. It's not that the state of America was ever that good or special. It's just compared to the other slag heaps, it was a little bit better, so prosperity had a better chance here and became the model of the world. But then the parasites flocked here like locusts to a cornfield because that's where prosperity had been created. Now we've entered into this decadent trough, a bottom trough, hopefully. Hopefully it's the end of this deepening decadence. So I get what you're saying, but the construct of our republic is certainly better than the North American Union or the United Nations. So many libertarians are just ready to let it all collapse. My issue is we are collapsing into a greater form of evil government. What do you say to that?
I say that has been an ongoing process for a long time, and that's why we need to focus. We need to focus on solutions. Okay, we need to be solution oriented. You're solution oriented in a lot of ways with a lot of your products that you talk about. Okay, we need to be solution oriented in terms of power, in terms of communication, in terms of transportation. We need to look, I've said it before as a joke, but it's partially true. If the Declaration of Independence were written today, it would read like a 12-step program as we wean ourselves away from government. But the point is, we are reaching a crisis point where the system is going to collapse upon itself. We don't need to seek out a revolution. They are bringing on a revolution, and it's simply a matter of when the music stops.
I agree.
Who is going to have a chair left? Who is going to have a chair left? And I say it needs to be we liberty seekers are not eliminated by them.
But they think the collapse is going to bring in their Valhalic, utopian, socialist, technocratic construct. There's no way it's going to work. It's going to be an unbelievable, unmitigated disaster. I mean, do you think they have a method of their madness at the technocratic level?
It's again going back to Star Wars. The more they tighten their grip, the more the system will slip through their fingers. Okay, the balance to every controlled economy is a counter economy. We are the counter economy. We will build the economy so that it becomes the economy, and we do that by making our business resilient and immune to their attacks.
What does your gut tell you, Neil? What does your gut tell you? How is this going to end?
I think it's going to end in triumph because we have history on our side. We have economics on our side. Their economics is based on a lie that you can create something out of nothing. Our economics is based on a truth that that the people who produce things are the crucial the crucial base to our security and our freedom. They think that we will be fooled, that we will accept them as our paternalistic nanny state. That's a bit of a contradiction, but I think it covers both ends of it. We're not going to. That's not the basic principles that our freedom was founded on, that our prosperity was founded on. We simply need to remember who we are and say, no, you are not my master.
Well, I agree with that statement, and we have to just respond to the mind control by pointing out what an unmitigated fraud it is. Again, the movie is alongsidenightmovie.com. Folks can find out the details there. Neil Schulman, thank you so much for the time.
It has been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure having you.